Hey, it's Ray Steele. Hope you like this, and please hit the subscribe button. Appreciate it. A great band, and if you have not heard their stuff, you probably have, and you just don't know it. They are coming to town on September 30th at the Palladium in Carmel. The legendary Tower of Power. The man who first put it all together, or helped put it together, Emilio Castillo, fellow sax player, a much better sax player than me, is joining us today. Mr. Castillo, hello, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
It is tremendous to have you here, and tremendous to have the band coming. And I would think it's pretty good to be able to say that you guys are still not just together, but still performing at an extremely high level after more than 50 years of doing this now.
Yeah, we just celebrated 54 years and the band is still humming.
To what do you attribute is there any secret to longevity in the music business? Is there any secret to not just staying together? You're not a tribute act, you're the real thing, and it sounds just like it did all those years ago.
Well, my patented answer to that these days is God did it, I just showed up. Because our first 20 years, we made every mistake you could possibly make. And then around 88, I sobered up, and my partner Doc sobered up a year later, and pretty soon we were all praying together. It became a whole different animal. So I give God the credit. But also, we make the music exactly the way we want it to be. We don't chase trends. We learned a long time ago, no matter what we do, we sound like Tower of Power. So we might as well just embrace that and keep doing it. And the fans seem to like it when we take that approach.
Did you go through what a lot of bands usually go through if they last a long time, where you're popular, your sound is hip, it's what is the thing at the time, and then maybe in the popular music world it falls out of favor, and then many years later, all of a sudden, a lot of new people discover you, and then you do, say, an NPR Tiny Desk concert, and this whole new audience figures out, my goodness, this has been out there all the time. Is that kind of what you guys went through?
Yeah, that played out in our career in a big way. We had our heyday in the early 70s, kind of came to our demise in the late 70s, couldn't get a record contract. They started referring to us in the industry as dinosaurs, And then about 6, 7 years later, at the end of the 80s, after not being able to get a record deal or nothing, all of a sudden now, because we've been together so long and we're still doing it, we're still playing live, got a lot of fans, they're saying, oh, you're an institution. And oh, by the way, what about this new, they had bands like Robert Cray and Bonnie Raitt, and isn't that the cool thing? And your thing is back in. I go, to tell you the truth, I don't pay attention to it. I just keep doing what I'm doing. And then, I tell people it's a fine line between a dinosaur and an institution, and then the next thing I know, oh, you're not an institution no more. It's 10 years later, you're a legend, fine line between a dinosaur and a legend as well.
Let's go back to the foundation. Correct me if I'm wrong, you are from Detroit originally, but you ended up in California. How did that happen?
I lived in Detroit till I was 11, and my dad was a bartender there, and he had lost his job, and he had always wanted to be in San Francisco Bay Area, and he thought he could be just as broke there as he could in Detroit. And so we took a long trip cross country, had a great time, and went to the Bay Area, and that's where I really got into music. Although from a very young age, I was really into listening to music, but I started playing when I got to California. And I didn't do it like most kids, Most kids get an instrument, they practice for years and years, and maybe then join a band. We started the band the first day, and then we learned to play along the way. So I've had a band like all my life since I was 14 years old.
What gravitated you to the sax? You're a tenor, but I mean most saxes can play most of the sax horns. But what gravitated you to the sax? What made it appealing?
Well, as I say, my dad was a bartender, and he used to work at this place in Palo Alto called the Cabana. It was kind of like a small Caesar's Palace, and they had this show bar in there called Nero's Nook, and they always had what they called show bands in there, like the Swingin' Lads and the Big Beats, And we would go there to pick up my dad, my mom, and my brother and me, and the bands would be rehearsing, and we'd watch them while we were waiting for my dad. And I always thought the sax player was the coolest guy. He was up there in the front in the spotlight, he was playing this cool music. My brother thought the drummer was the coolest guy. So when we started to play, my dad took us, to the music store. He said, anything you want. And the instruments were on the wall. And I said, I want that saxophone. And my brother said, I want the drums. And we started.
As much as you've played and with as many artists as you've played, what stands out about playing with Tower of Power, playing the show like you're going to play at the Palladium, as opposed to backing up, say, another big name star? I mean, because you guys have played behind a little bit of everyone over the years.
We've done, Santana and, Aerosmith and Poison and, Neil Diamond, the Grateful Dead. We play with a lot of different people, and it's always a lot of fun to do that. One of the things that happens when I do that is I realize how I take for granted how tight my band is, and then also, I learn a lot of stuff from these other bands. The way we did a lot of work with Huey Lewis and the News. We toured with them, our horns, for 4.5 years, and I learned a lot from him about, not just music, but the interaction between fans and the band members, and how to sort of a different way, a larger way of looking at your career. Great guys to work with, and so I enjoy it. We play with the Eurythmics, and David Sanborn live at Montreux, and every time we play with those great artists, it just gives me a little more input and stuff that I want to put in our music.
That is a diverse list. I was not expecting to hear Poison there. Poison was from my teenage metalhead days when I didn't care what I listened to, and was going to see them in concert. But that's funny you should mention Huey Lewis. I just read Dave Grohl's wonderful book from Foo Fighters, Nirvana, The Storytellers, and he puts over Huey Lewis as well. And that's not somebody you immediately think of when it comes to I guess a deep level of musicianship, but as you say, I mean, man, Huey connected with the audience back in the day.
Well, the band was excellent. The
Yeah.
writing was excellent. Huey was a great frontman, and even though these days you may not think about him so much, back then that's all anybody thought about. He was the #1 artist in the world, and he happened to be a huge fan of Tower of Power, and so he would let me bring Tower of Power out, to New York. And we'd be playing Madison Square Garden, and he'd say, we're going tonight after the show to the Bottom Line. Tower of Power is playing a show at midnight, and we're sitting in. And we go there, and the place would be besieged with fans, So he was a real supporter of Tower of Power.
That's outstanding. So obviously we look forward to now. When I say we look forward to the hits of Tower of Power, it's interesting because you look at some bands and you say, oh, they had this many #1 hits or top 10 hits. Tower of Power was a bit of a different animal in which you did have some hits, but it was not about always about where you landed on the charts back in the day. But those grooves that you created have lasted all those years, regardless of whatever Billboard was saying back in 1974, 75, or whenever.
Yeah, it's true. We never really rang the bell like Michael Jackson or Huey or Aerosmith. We got up there in the top 10, and we got in the top 20, and we certainly got in the top 40. But it wasn't like that. But I remember, many years later, hearing a story about Quincy Jones talking to Patty Austin's mother and father, and saying, I really hope she doesn't become a big superstar immediately. And they were like, why? They brought her to Quincy to make her a star, He said, if she could just have some hits, she'll have a long career, and that's what's happened for us. We've been here 54 years. We have really super mega fans all over the world. We're able to work consistently. And, it's not as though sometimes, like with Huey or Michael Jackson, you go up there, you ring the bell, and then everybody wants to tear you down. We never really had that happen with us.
Well, it's going to be a fun night at the Palladium, September 30th. The great Tower of Power is going to be rocking the place. And again, if you haven't seen a show at the Palladium acoustically, it's wonderful. And I just cannot wait to hear Emilio Castillo in that horn section from Tower of Power on the 30th. So, Mr. Castillo, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Good luck with the rest of the tour, and we can't wait to see you here.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to coming out there.